My name is Sienna Hart, and I'm 31 years old. He texted, I think maybe we need to break up. I was sitting at my desk reviewing quarterly reports when the message lit up on my phone, bright and dramatic in the corner of my screen, like it was supposed to change everything. But when I read it, I didn't feel heartbreak. I didn't even feel shock. I felt relief. That was the moment I knew the truth before I was ready to say it out loud. Ethan, 28, had been doing this for months. Every few weeks, whenever he didn't get what he wanted, he pulled the same emotional stunt and waited for me to panic. The last time it was because I couldn't take a day off work for one of his friend's random Wednesday pool parties. Before that, it was because I hadn't sounded excited enough about a weekend trip he wanted me to split with him after he had already decided we were going. There was always a punishment when I failed some invisible test. A cold silence, a dramatic accusation, a vague threat. And now this. I stared at the message for maybe 30 seconds, my face still, my body strangely calm, and for the first time in 2 years, I didn't reach for the relationship. I reached for the truth. So I typed back, I agree. Your stuff will be on the porch in an hour. The typing bubble appeared immediately. Disappeared. Came back. Then the flood started. Wait, what? I was joking, babe. I was just upset. Call me. This isn't funny. I was testing you. There it was. The confession, sitting in plain sight. I didn't answer. I put my phone on silent, closed the quarterly report, and got to work on something much more overdue. Packing. 2 years of him gradually moving into my house without ever officially living there. Not enough to pay rent. Not enough to carry weight. Just enough to leave traces everywhere, like a slow occupation disguised as love. I started in the bathroom. His beard trimmer. 3 different colognes. All expensive, all half-used. Hair product. Face wash. A drawer full of supplements he swore were essential and then forgot existed. The medicine cabinet looked bare without his things, and somehow that made the room feel bigger. Then the bedroom. His clothes first, because they were everywhere. Shirts in my closet, gym shorts in my laundry basket, socks under the bed, a watch box on my dresser, his charger on my nightstand. The expensive pillow he insisted helped his neck, but somehow never stayed on his side of the bed. Then the decorative pieces. The framed photo from his cousin's wedding. He looked polished and charming. I looked happy in the way women do when they are still explaining things away to themselves. The throw blanket he said matched the room, but felt like sandpaper. A fake plant that made the space pop. The more I packed, the more I noticed how much of him had been aesthetic, performance, convenience. He liked having a place in my life. He just didn't like earning it. The living room came next. His gaming headset. The yoga mat he bought during a motivation phase and used twice. Books arranged for display, never opened. A speaker he left here because carrying it back and forth was annoying. In the kitchen, I found more of the same. Specialty coffee pods. A juicer used exactly twice. Fancy cocktail glasses he liked because they photographed well. A blender he begged me to let him buy, then complained it took up too much counter space. By the end, 45 minutes had passed. 6 boxes. 3 garbage bags. Neat, labeled, final. Outside they went. I lined everything up on the porch with more care than he had ever shown my peace of mind. Then I took a photo and sent it. Everything's outside. Please collect it within 2 hours, or it goes to the curb for donation pickup. My phone nearly combusted. Missed calls piled up so fast the screen looked ridiculous. Text after text, each one swinging between outrage and desperation. You can't do this. I basically live here. You're overreacting. It was a joke. I'm coming over. I read them with the detached clarity of someone looking at old evidence instead of a current problem. Basically lived here was not the same as paying rent. Occasionally buying groceries was not the same as contributing. Occupying my space was not the same as building a home with me. 20 minutes later, I heard his car before I saw it. He pulled into my driveway too fast, brakes sharp, engine still running. He was out before the car fully stopped, slamming the door so hard it echoed through the front of the house. Then came the pounding. Sienna! His voice was already fraying. Open the door, this is insane. I didn't move toward it. I just opened the doorbell camera feed on my phone and watched him through the app. He looked wrecked, which almost would have moved me if I hadn't seen how calculated he could be whenever he needed to turn emotion into leverage. Your things are on the porch, I said through the speaker. Take them and go. He looked directly at the camera. We need to talk. No, you said we should break up. I agreed. You knew I didn't mean it. That almost made me laugh. No, I said, calm and even. I knew exactly what you meant. You wanted me to beg. He stepped closer to the door. You're being cold. And you're trespassing. If you don't leave after collecting your things, I'll call the police. Something changed in his face then. Not remorse, not understanding. Offense, as if the real injury here was not what he had done, but the fact that it had stopped working. He grabbed one of the boxes off the porch and hurled it toward the door. It hit the frame hard enough to make me flinch, though I was still standing several feet back. A carton of protein bars burst loose inside the box and rolled across the porch. Classy. Then, because humiliation apparently needed an audience, he sat down on my front steps and called his mother. He put her on speaker. Of course he did. "Sweetheart, what's going on?" she asked, her voice tinny through the phone, but still unmistakably concerned. "Mom, she's throwing me out," he said, already leaning into wounded disbelief. "Over a text." There was a beat of silence. Then his mother asked the only question that mattered. "What did the text say?" He hesitated. That tiny pause told the truth before he did. "I maybe said we should break up," he muttered, "but I was kidding." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear traffic from the next street over. Then she exhaled slowly and said his full name in that deeply disappointed tone only mothers seem to master. "Ethan James Hartwell, tell me you did not do that again." His shoulders stiffened. "It was a test," he snapped. "I wanted to see if she'd fight for me." Another silence. Then his mother said, quieter now, "Come home, we'll talk." He looked stunned, genuinely stunned, like he had expected backup and instead been handed a mirror. He stood up too fast, grabbed one box, then another, movements jerky, angry, embarrassed. He didn't look at the camera again. Before he reached the car, I spoke one last time through the speaker. "Take all of it, Ethan. There's nothing left here for you." He froze for half a second. Then he loaded the rest without another word, slammed the trunk, and drove away. I stood in my entryway afterward with the quiet wrapping itself around me, thick and unfamiliar. For a moment I thought maybe that was it. Maybe the test had ended, and so had he. I didn't yet understand that for Ethan, losing was never the end of the performance. It was only the moment he decided to make the scene bigger. 3 days later, I understood something I probably should have admitted to myself much earlier. A person who uses love like leverage does not know how to lose quietly. Day 1 after the breakup had been denial, endless calls, long texts, a few dramatic voice notes I never opened. Day 2 was anger, accusations, blame, revisionist history, the usual smokescreen people throw up when facts stop protecting them. Day 3 was bargaining, panic, and the beginning of a spiral so ridiculous it would have been funny if it hadn't been attached to my actual life. At 2:03 a.m., my phone lit up on my nightstand. I was half asleep when I saw his name. For one irrational second, I thought maybe he had finally found some shred of dignity and wanted to apologize. Instead, the message said, "We need to talk, I'm late." I stared at it in the dark. Late. For what? Then the next message came. I might have gotten someone pregnant. I actually sat up. Not because I believed him, because the nerve of it was almost impressive. We had not been intimate in nearly 3 weeks because, according to Ethan, I had been emotionally unavailable. And now somehow he expected that message to pull me back into his chaos. So I replied, "Then take a test, get facts, and have your lawyer contact mine if there's anything real to discuss." The typing bubble came and went 3 different times. Then, "You'd really make me do this alone?" I read it twice, not because it was confusing, but because I needed to appreciate how quickly he could switch from manipulator to victim without changing tone. "You broke up with me," I typed back. "That was your decision. Handle it accordingly." He didn't respond. No shocked message, no angry follow-up, no dramatic call, nothing, which told me everything I needed to know. No real emergency, just another button pressed in the dark, hoping one of them would still work. By noon, he had moved on to social media. I found out because Carlos texted me a screenshot with the caption, "Please tell me this is not about you." It was a crying selfie, Ethan's face angled just right, eyes glossy, mouth tight with curated pain. The caption read, "When you give someone 2 years of your life and they throw you out like trash over a misunderstanding." The comments were exactly what you'd expect. "You deserve better. Men like her don't appreciate real love. Stay strong. Her loss." I looked at the post for maybe 10 seconds, not angry, not even embarrassed. Mostly I was tired. Tired of how predictable it all was. Tired of how often people used vague emotional language to hide exact behavior. Misunderstanding was such a convenient word. It erased sequence, accountability, and motive in one neat little package. But not everyone in our orbit was gullible. A mutual friend commented, "Didn't you text her saying maybe you should break up?" Another added, "And didn't you admit it was a test?" The post disappeared within an hour. He didn't like sympathy when it came with witnesses. Then came the possession phase. That afternoon, he sent a list. A list, not of real missing items, of invented leverage. My grandmother's ring. Never existed. My laptop charger. Mine. Several sentimental items. Meaningless because he didn't name a single one. The money you owe me. For what, exactly? The decorative whiskey glasses? The groceries he bought twice in 6 months? The gas he used driving to my house uninvited? I sent one response. Everything you left here was on the porch. You threw a box at my door, loaded your things, and drove away. I have doorbell footage. Stop contacting me. 2 minutes later, he called. I let it ring out. Then another text came in. You're really going to act like I'm dangerous now? I didn't answer. That was the thing Ethan never understood about consequence. He thought it only counted if the other person screamed. If I stayed calm, in his mind, I was still available, still engaged, still playing. But I wasn't. I had moved from arguing to documenting, and that change seemed to terrify him more than anything else. The next morning, he crossed a line I genuinely hadn't expected. My office receptionist patched an urgent call through to my cell during a budget meeting. She never did that unless it sounded serious. I stepped out into the hallway, heart already tightening, and answered. A woman's voice said, "Hi, I'm calling from your doctor's office. We need to discuss some important test results." For one split second, ice went through me. Then the woman cleared her throat, and I knew the voice. Ethan, badly disguised, but unmistakable. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because the alternative was being outraged before 9 in the morning. You are impersonating medical staff to get me on the phone? I asked. There was a pause. Then he dropped the fake voice. I needed to talk to you. I leaned against the wall outside the conference room and closed my eyes. This is harassment. No, it isn't. You're ignoring me. Yes, I said, because we broke up. You know that's not what this is. It is exactly what this is. His breathing sharpened on the line. I could hear him unraveling in real time, hear the rage underneath the fear. He still thought if he pushed hard enough, I would return to the version of myself that tried to soothe him. I was done being that woman. Listen carefully, I said. Any further contact goes through a lawyer. You can't threaten me. That wasn't a threat, it was information. I know your secrets, he snapped. That one almost interested me. What secrets? Silence. Then, I know things about you. I waited. Nothing. No affair. No hidden crime. No confession. No specific accusation. Just the bluff of a person who desperately wanted mystery to do the work facts no longer could. My browser history? I said evenly. Quarterly reports, gym playlists, and barbecue recipes. Terrifying. He hung up. That should have been the moment he felt shame. It wasn't. Because Ethan had reached the stage where embarrassment only made him louder. 2 days later, at 6 in the morning, I was at the gym. That hour had always felt sacred to me. Quiet. Predictable. A place where nobody asked emotional questions and everything made sense. Weight either moved or it didn't. Progress was measurable. Effort had results. I was in the middle of a bench press set when I saw movement near the front desk. At first, I ignored it. Then I looked again. Ethan. He was standing there in a hoodie and joggers, one hand moving dramatically as he talked to the girl at the counter, the other pointing toward me. I sat up on the bench, racked the bar, and watched the front desk employee approach with the cautious expression of someone who already knew this conversation was about to be unpleasant. "Ma'am," she said politely, "this man says he's your boyfriend and that he lost his guest card on your account." I stood up slowly, wiped my hands on my towel, and looked directly at Ethan. The gym was quiet enough that my voice didn't need to be loud. "He is not my boyfriend," I said. "He is my ex-boyfriend. We broke up 3 days ago, and he is not authorized to use anything connected to me." The girl at the desk blinked. Ethan stepped forward immediately, the performance starting before the sentence had even landed. "Babe, don't do this." I felt something in me go completely still. Not pain, not anger, just clarity. I turned back to the employee. "He's following me," I said. "Please remove him." That got attention. 2 staff members looked over, then a trainer, then the manager. The energy in the room changed instantly, because once behavior has to be explained out loud in front of strangers, it stops looking romantic and starts looking exactly like what it is. Ethan's face changed too. He had expected discomfort, maybe guilt, maybe a private conversation where he could corner me into looking cruel. Instead, he got fluorescent lighting, witnesses, and a front desk system with security protocols. "Seriously?" he said, voice cracking. "You're going to embarrass me like this?" I almost laughed at the question. As if embarrassment had arrived from nowhere. As if it had not been built, step by step, by every stunt he had pulled since that first text. The manager stepped between us. "Sir, I'm going to need you to leave." Ethan looked at me one last time, desperate for some signal that I would still rescue him from the consequences of his own behavior. I gave him nothing. He started protesting, louder now, saying I was ruining his routine, his access, his mental health, his ability to move on, which would have sounded more compelling if he hadn't ignored every opportunity to do exactly that. When security walked him out, he twisted back toward me and shouted, "You're really doing all this over a misunderstanding?" The whole gym heard him. I picked up my water bottle, looked him in the eye, and said, "No, I'm doing this because I finally understand you." He went still, only for a second. Then he was gone. The front desk flagged my account, made notes, and asked if I wanted them to call the police if he returned. I said not yet. But as I stood there afterward, pulse finally settling, I realized something I hadn't wanted to say out loud before. This was no longer breakup drama. This was becoming a pattern. And patterns, once documented, become evidence. That afternoon, I got a call from one of his friends. "Brittany." Her tone was already irritated before she finished saying my name. "You need to take Ethan back." I actually pulled the phone away from my ear to make sure I'd heard her correctly. "No," I said. "I really don't." She exhaled sharply. "He's sleeping on my couch, crying nonstop, and making this everyone's problem." That at least sounded believable. I sat down in my kitchen, looked around at the quiet, the clean counters, the absence of his chaos, and felt almost luxurious in my own peace. "Sounds exhausting," I said. "He made a mistake." "He made several. He was just testing the relationship. Healthy people don't do that." There was a pause on her end. Not agreement exactly, but not denial either. Then she lowered her voice. "He's threatening to do something dramatic." I leaned back in my chair. "Like what?" "He bought a ticket to go see his ex-girlfriend." I waited for that to mean something. It didn't. "Okay," I said. "Okay," Brittany repeated. "That's all you have to say?" "Yes. He wants you to care." There it was, finally. The one honest sentence anyone on his side had managed to speak. I looked out my kitchen window at the porch where his boxes had sat 3 days earlier and said, "That sounds like a problem for him." "You're cold." "No," I said quietly. "I'm finished." She hung up on me, and for the first time, I started to understand how many people had confused my patience with permission. Ethan wasn't spiraling because he had lost me. He was spiraling because I had stopped participating. 2 weeks after the breakup, the silence I had chosen for myself started doing something useful. It began exposing things. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly peeling back the layers of everything Ethan had said, staged, and tried to turn into a reaction. The first crack came from someone I didn't expect. His cousin. We had never been particularly close, but we had always been polite. The kind of distant family connection that only exists because you've been in the same rooms often enough to recognize each other's patterns. She sent me a message. "Hey, I don't want to get involved, but I think you should know something." I read it twice before opening the next line. "He didn't go to his ex's city. He's been at his aunt's place 2 towns over." I leaned back against my couch, phone still in my hand. Of course he hadn't gone. The photos he posted, airport selfies, vague captions about needing space, shots of a coffee cup near a window, suddenly rearranged themselves in my mind, not as evidence of distance, but as props. A performance. A message meant for one person. Me. He wanted me to see it, to imagine him leaving, moving on, reconnecting with someone from his past. He wanted me to feel urgency, jealousy, regret. He wanted me to chase him. I thanked his cousin, and she answered almost immediately. "Honestly, everyone's tired. He keeps changing the story depending on who he's talking to." That didn't surprise me either. People like Ethan didn't just manipulate individuals. They manipulated narratives. And when one version stopped working, they rewrote it. A few hours later, I saw exactly what she meant. Carlos invited me to a small game night at his place. Nothing dramatic. Just a handful of people, drinks, cards, the kind of environment that used to feel normal before everything turned into a spectacle. I hesitated before going. Not because I was afraid of Ethan, because I was tired of him existing in every space I used to enjoy. But I went anyway. And the moment I stepped into Carlos's apartment, I understood why his cousin had warned me. Ethan was already there. Of course he was. He was standing near the kitchen island, mid-story, gesturing with one hand, drink in the other, his voice carrying just enough to pull attention without seeming like he was trying too hard. "And I just think she misunderstood what I meant," he was saying as I walked in. "I wasn't actually breaking up with her. I was trying to communicate that something felt off." I stopped just inside the doorway, not announcing myself, just listening. Carlos noticed me first. His eyes flicked toward me, then back to Ethan. Ethan followed the movement. Our eyes met. For a split second, something real flashed there. Not anger. Not even desperation. Panic. Then it was gone, replaced instantly by something softer, more controlled. Sienna, he said, like he hadn't expected me but was completely fine with my presence anyway. Hey. The room went quiet. Not dramatically, just that subtle shift when people realize they are standing in the middle of something they don't fully understand. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and set my bag down. Hey, I said calmly. No edge, no emotion, just acknowledgement. That seemed to confuse him more than anything else. He straightened slightly, recalibrating. I didn't know you were coming, he said. Carlos snorted under his breath. I texted her, he said. Told you not to come, actually. There it was. Ethan laughed, but it landed wrong. Too quick. Too thin. Yeah, well, he said, shrugging. I figured we're all adults. No need to avoid each other. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I was just explaining what happened, he continued, glancing at the group. You know, since everyone seems to have heard some version of it. He stepped a little closer, lowering his voice just enough to make it feel more personal, more reasonable. I didn't mean the breakup text the way it sounded, he said. You know that, right? I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, you said you were testing me. The room stilled again. He hesitated, just for a second. Then he smiled, like that was an easy fix. I mean, yeah, but not like that. I just needed to know if you cared enough to fight for us. I nodded slowly. And when I agreed with you? His jaw tightened. You overreacted. I felt something settle inside me, something firm and immovable. Or, I said evenly, I believed you. That landed harder than anything else I could have said, because it wasn't an attack. It was a mirror. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then laughed softly like the moment didn't matter. It's not that simple, he said. It is, I replied. Silence stretched between us. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. Around us, people shifted, suddenly very interested in their drinks, their phones, anything that didn't require choosing a side out loud. Ethan leaned in slightly, lowering his voice further. You're really going to act like I didn't mean anything to you? He asked. There was something different in his tone now. Not performance. Not entirely. Something closer to fear. I met his gaze without flinching. You meant exactly what you showed me, I said. He stared at me like he was trying to find the version of me that used to fill in the gaps for him, the one who softened things, explained things, gave him room to retreat without consequence. She wasn't there anymore, and I think in that moment he finally understood that. Not accepted it, but recognized it. He stepped back too quickly, like proximity itself had started to burn. Okay, he said, louder now, forcing a smile back into place, if that's how you want to play it. I didn't answer, because there was nothing left to say. The rest of the night unfolded in fragments. Ethan stayed, but he didn't stay still. He moved from person to person, retelling the story, adjusting it each time depending on who he was talking to. To one friend, I had kicked him out over a joke. To another, I had misinterpreted a serious conversation. To someone else, he implied there might have been other factors, letting the sentence trail off just enough to suggest something without committing to it. Each version drifted farther from the truth. Carlos pulled me aside at one point and handed me a drink I hadn't asked for. He's been doing this all week, he said quietly, showing up places, telling different versions of the same story. I figured, I said. You okay? I looked around the room, at the life I had stepped back into, at the people who were starting to see things for what they were without me having to explain it. Yeah, I said, I am. And I meant it, because for the first time, I wasn't fighting to be understood. I was just letting the truth stand. By the time I left, Ethan was still there, mid-conversation, mid-performance. He didn't try to stop me, didn't follow me out, didn't call after me, but I could feel it. That shift, that realization. He wasn't pulling me back in. He was losing control of the narrative, and people were starting to notice. I thought that would slow him down. I was wrong, because when the story stops bending the way someone wants it to, they don't always let it go. Sometimes they just make it louder. The next morning, I saw his car parked across the street from my office. Engine off, windows slightly tinted, waiting. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt since this started. Not anger, not exhaustion, something sharper, awareness. Because this was no longer about being right. It was about being safe. The first time I saw his car outside my office, I told myself it might be coincidence. The second time, I stopped pretending. By the third day, it had become a pattern. Same spot, same time, engine off. Windows cracked just enough to suggest he had been sitting there for a while. Waiting. Not approaching, not calling, not texting. Just being there, which somehow felt worse, because it meant he had learned something. He had learned that direct contact got him blocked, documented, warned. So now he was trying something quieter, something that lived in the gray space between presence and violation. I didn't go to him. I didn't acknowledge him. I walked into my building the same way I always did. Head up, pace steady, badge ready. But I felt it. That awareness under my skin, like something watching from just outside the frame. Security noticed before I said anything. "Is that someone you know?" one of the guards asked on the fourth day, nodding subtly toward the street. I followed his gaze, then looked back at him. "Yes," I said, "my ex-boyfriend." The word ex felt deliberate now, anchored. "He's been out there a few times," the guard said carefully. "I know." "Do you want us to handle it?" "Not yet." That was the line I hadn't fully crossed in my own mind. But I was getting closer. "Not yet," I said. "If he approaches, let me know immediately." The guard nodded. I hoped he would stop after being seen. Instead, he treated my hesitation like permission. The next day, he stepped out of the car. I saw him through those glass doors just as I was about to leave for lunch. He didn't rush toward me, didn't wave, didn't call my name. He just stood there, holding a sign, white poster board, black marker. "Let's talk." I actually paused, not because I was moved, because I was trying to process how someone could shift from fake medical calls to public signs in less than a week and still think this was normal. One of my coworkers stopped beside me, following my line of sight. "Is that for you?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I said. She looked at me for a second longer, then nodded once. "Do you want me to walk out with you?" I appreciated the offer. "I'm okay," I said, "but thank you." I stepped outside. The moment he saw me, his posture changed. Shoulders straightening, expression softening, like he was stepping into a role he had rehearsed. "Sienna," he said, lowering the sign slightly. "Can we just talk?" There it was again. Just talk. As if conversation had ever been the problem. "We have nothing to talk about," I said evenly. "That's not true." "It is." He took a step closer. Not aggressive. Not quite. But close enough to make the space feel smaller. "You're really going to ignore everything we had?" he asked. "I'm not ignoring it," I said. "I'm ending it." His jaw tightened. "You're acting like I did something unforgivable." I held his gaze. "You did." That landed. I saw it. Not acceptance, but impact. "Because I said something in the heat of the moment," he pushed. "Because you used the relationship as leverage," I corrected, and then kept trying to control what happened after. His grip tightened on the sign. "I came here to fix things." "No," I said quietly. "You came here to make a scene." For a second, neither of us moved. Then I stepped around him. And that's when he reached for my arm. Not hard. Not violent, but enough. Enough to change everything. I pulled back immediately. "Don't touch me," I said louder now. Heads turned. People slowed. That invisible line he had been dancing around, he had just stepped over it. "I'm not trying to hurt you," he said quickly, hands lifting in mock surrender. "Do not touch me," I repeated. Security was already moving. 2 guards stepped outside, positioning themselves between us without needing to ask what was happening. "Sir," one of them said firmly, "you need to leave." Ethan looked at me one last time, not pleading, not apologizing, angry, like I had just exposed something he wasn't ready to have seen. "You're really doing this?" he said. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because now it wasn't just me. It was witnesses. It was security. It was a building full of people who had just seen enough to understand the situation without context. He backed up slowly, shaking his head like none of this made sense to him, like he was the one being pushed out of something unfair. Then he got in his car and drove off. That afternoon, I filed a report with HR. Not emotional, not dramatic, just facts. Dates, times, behavior, evidence. They took it seriously, more seriously than I expected. "Do you feel safe?" the HR manager asked. I thought about it, about the car, the sign, the hand on my arm. "No," I said honestly, "not entirely." That changed everything. They escalated immediately. Security logs were updated. My schedule was adjusted. They offered to have someone walk me to and from my car. And most importantly, they asked the question I had been avoiding. "Do you want to involve the police?" I hesitated. Not because I doubted what was happening, because saying yes made it real in a different way. But before I could answer, the decision was made for me. The next day he came back. New sign. "You can't ignore love." I didn't even go outside. Security called the police. By the time I reached the lobby, they were already there, talking to him beside his car. I watched from inside as he tried to explain, gesture, minimize. They didn't engage with any of it. They handed him a warning. When he finally drove away, something in me shifted. Not relief. Not yet. But certainty. This wasn't going to stop on its own. So that afternoon, I filed for a restraining order. I expected that to be the escalation. I was wrong. Because Ethan wasn't done trying to control the story. He just changed tactics again. 3 days later, someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked the camera first. A woman stood on my porch, mid-20s, confident posture, arms crossed. Not familiar. I opened the door halfway. Can I help you? I asked. She looked me up and down, like she had already decided who I was before I spoke. You're Sienna? She said. Yes. She took a breath. I'm with Ethan now. I blinked once, slowly. Of course. Of course he was. And of course this was how it would show up. She continued before I could respond. I think we need to talk about what you did to him. There it was. The new narrative. The new audience. The new attempt to rewrite everything. I opened the door a little wider, not to invite her in, to see her clearly. What exactly do you think I did? I asked. She didn't hesitate. You threw him out over nothing, she said. You've been harassing him. He showed me everything. Everything. That word again. I studied her face. Not hostile. Not exactly. Convinced. Which meant she believed him. I nodded once. Okay, I said. Come here. I stepped aside just enough to let her see inside. Then I walked to the table and picked up my folder. The one I had started building without fully realizing it. Screenshots. Call logs. Reports. Doorbell footage stills. The text. The exact text. I think, I said calmly, placing everything in front of her, you should see the full version. She hesitated, then stepped inside. And for the next 5 minutes, I watched her expression change. Confusion first, then doubt, then understanding. By the time she reached the screenshot where he admitted it was a test, her hands had gone still. She looked up at me slowly. He said you were abusive, she said. I didn't react. Did he mention the police reports? I asked. Her silence answered for her. I pointed to the file. The restraining order paperwork is in there too. She flipped through it faster now, less confident, more urgent. When she finished, she closed the folder carefully, like it had weight. Then she looked at me again. Not defensive this time. Not confrontational. Just quiet. I didn't know, she said. I believe you, I replied. Another pause. Then she exhaled, shaking her head slightly. I'm so sorry, she said. He told me you were stalking him. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. He seems to like that word, I said. She nodded slowly. Then, without another argument or accusation, she turned and walked out. I watched her go. And as the door closed, I realized something important. Ethan hadn't just lost control of me. He was starting to lose control of everyone he pulled into the story. Which meant the next time he called me, it wouldn't be to fix things. It would be to blame me for everything that had just fallen apart. He called 10 minutes later. I didn't answer. I watched the screen light up, his name flashing again and again like repetition alone could force a different outcome. Then the voicemail came through. I let it play on speaker, not because I cared what he had to say anymore, but because I wanted it documented. Clear. Unedited. Exactly as it was. Sienna, what the hell did you do? No greeting. No hesitation. Just accusation. You had no right to talk to her. You twisted everything. You made me look insane. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at nothing in particular, letting his voice fill the room. She left. Do you understand that? She left because of you. You always do this. You always make everything about you. I actually smiled at that. Not because it was funny. Because it was so perfectly backwards, it almost felt scripted. You couldn't just have one conversation like a normal person, he continued. You had to bring out, what? Evidence? Like I'm some kind of criminal? There was a pause, a breath, then quieter, sharper. You ruined this. I let the message end. Then I saved it. Because by that point, I understood something very clearly. Ethan didn't think he had done anything wrong. He thought he had lost control. And in his mind, those were the same thing. The court date was set 3 weeks later. In those 3 weeks, he didn't stop. He just adapted. No direct messages, no calls I could answer. Instead, everything came sideways. Mutual friends suddenly checking in. People I barely spoke to asking vague questions about what had really happened. A handwritten letter delivered through someone I used to trust. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because I already knew what it would say. Some version of apology wrapped in justification. Some version of accountability that still made room for blame. Every single attempt went the same way. Returned. Ignored. Documented. That was the shift. Before, I had tried to understand him. Now I was just recording him. The hearing itself was quieter than I expected. No shouting. No dramatic confrontation. Just a room, a judge, and facts laid out in order. I sat at one table. He sat at the other. For the first time in weeks, Ethan wasn't performing. He looked tired, not reflective, not remorseful, just worn down in the way people get when reality refuses to adjust to their version of events. The judge reviewed everything. Texts, call logs, police warnings, security reports, witness statements from my office, the gym incident, the impersonation call, the signs, the attempted contact through third parties. Every piece placed exactly where it belonged, Ethan tried to interrupt twice. Both times he was told to wait. When he finally got to speak, he leaned forward, hands pressed against the table like he could physically hold his argument in place. "It's all a misunderstanding," he said. "I never meant to harass her. I was trying to fix the relationship." The judge looked at him for a long moment, then asked one simple question. "Did you send her a message suggesting you break up?" Ethan hesitated. "Yes, but—" "And did she respond by agreeing?" Another pause. "Yes, but—" The judge didn't let him finish. Then the relationship ended there. The room went very still. Ethan shook his head slightly, like that wasn't the point. "She knew I didn't mean it like that," he insisted. "I just needed to know if she cared." The judge leaned back slightly. "And why," she asked, "would someone test a relationship by threatening to end it?" Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "I just needed reassurance," he said finally. The judge nodded once. "That is not communication," she said. "That is manipulation." There it was. Clear. Uncomplicated. Named. Ethan's expression shifted. Not in understanding. In resistance. "That's not fair," he said. "She overreacted. She escalated everything. The judge raised a hand. "Did you contact her after the breakup?" "Yes, but—" "Did you appear at her home?" "Yes." "Her gym?" Yes." "Her workplace?" Silence. "Yes." "Did you continue attempting contact after being told to stop?" Another pause. "I was trying to fix things." The judge looked down at the file again, then back at him. "This is not an issue of misunderstanding," she said calmly. "This is a pattern of unwanted contact." Ethan leaned back in his chair, jaw tight, eyes flicking toward me for the first time since the hearing started. Like I was supposed to step in, explain something, soften it. I didn't move, because this wasn't my job anymore. The judge continued. "Based on the evidence presented, the court finds sufficient cause to grant the restraining order." The words landed with a kind of finality that didn't need volume. "Mr. Hartwell, you are to remain 500 feet away from Ms. Hart, her residence, and her workplace. Any violation of this order will result in further legal consequences." Ethan exhaled sharply. "This is insane," he muttered. The judge didn't react. "This hearing is concluded." That was it. No dramatic ending. No final speech. Just consequence. I thought that would be the end. I was wrong. Because even with a court order in place, Ethan still couldn't let go of the one thing he had been chasing this entire time. Access. He just had to get creative. He didn't come near me directly again, not close enough to violate the order, but he hovered at the edges. Places I used to go. Times I used to leave. Always just far enough away to claim coincidence. Mutual friends started getting messages again. "Can you just tell her I'm sorry? I just need closure. I need 5 minutes." They stopped passing them along after the third time I didn't respond. Then came the fake accounts. New profiles. No names. No photos. Messages that started neutral and slowly shifted. "I miss you. We should talk. You know this isn't how it's supposed to end." Each one reported. Each one blocked. Each one added to the growing record. The last attempt was almost surreal. He applied for a job at my company. Different department. Same building. HR flagged it immediately. Not because of me. Because of the restraining order. When they informed him he couldn't be hired under those conditions, he threatened to sue for discrimination. Their legal team shut that down in less than a day. After that, the attempts slowed, not stopped, but weakened like something running out of momentum. The final contact didn't come from him. It came from a therapist, an actual licensed therapist. I recognized the letterhead immediately. The message was polite, professional, carefully worded. It explained that Ethan was in therapy and working through unresolved emotional patterns related to the relationship. It asked if I would be open to participating in a closure conversation in a controlled, mediated setting. I read it once, then handed it to my lawyer. He didn't hesitate. "No," he said, "and we're responding formally." The reply was simple. Any closure required would need to happen without my involvement and within the strict boundaries of the restraining order. No exceptions. No negotiations. No access. That was the last time anyone reached out. 6 months later, the silence felt different. Not tense, not waiting for something, just quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask anything from you. I went back to my routines. Work, gym, weekends that didn't revolve around someone else's mood. I got promoted. Started dating again, slowly, carefully, without urgency. My house changed. Not dramatically. Just honestly. The things I kept were mine. The things I added made sense to me. No more decorative compromises. No more performing comfort. Just space that felt like it belonged to me again. And for the first time in a long time, it did. Around that same time, I ran into his mother in a grocery store. It wasn't dramatic. No music swelling. No slow-motion moment of recognition. Just a quiet turn down an aisle, a cart, a glance, And there she was, standing by the produce section like this was any other ordinary day. For a second, we both paused. Not awkward, not exactly, just aware. She looked older than I remembered, not physically, but in the way people do when something has weighed on them for a while. "Sienna," she said softly. I nodded. "Hi." There was a moment where either of us could have chosen to pretend this wasn't happening. She didn't. "I've been meaning to say something if I ever saw you," she continued. "I just didn't know if you'd want to hear it." I adjusted my grip on the basket in my hand, feeling the normalcy of it anchor me. "You can say it," I said. She took a breath. "I'm sorry," she said simply, "for everything. No excuses. No qualifiers. Just that." And somehow that made it land more. I nodded once. "Thank you." She hesitated, then added, "He's working on himself." I didn't react immediately. Not because I didn't believe her, because it didn't matter anymore in the way it used to. "I hope that goes well for him," I said. She studied my face like she was trying to find resentment or softness or something unresolved she could respond to. I gave her neither. After a moment, she nodded. "He knows he messed up," she said. "The whole testing thing, I never taught him that." I believed her, because people don't always learn their worst habits at home. Sometimes they build them slowly, layer by layer, until they start mistaking control for connection. "It's done now," I said. That was the truth. Not bitterness. Not forgiveness. Just finished. She gave a small, sad smile. "You're a good woman," she said. "He lost something real." Past tense. I noticed that. "Take care," I replied. And then I walked away. I didn't think about him again that day. Or the next. Or even the next week. That was the real ending. Not the court. Not the confrontation. Not the final message. The absence. The space where he used to be. No longer demanding attention. No longer shaping my choices. No longer turning every quiet moment into something I had to manage. I dated a little. Nothing serious. Not because I was afraid. Because I wasn't in a hurry. I worked more. Got better at what I did. Built routines that didn't depend on anyone else's mood. At the gym, my numbers went up. Steady. Predictable. Earned. At home, I changed things slowly. Not out of spite. Out of preference. The throw blankets felt better. The lighting made sense. The space looked like an adult lived there. Not a performance. Not a compromise. Just mine. The last thing I heard about Ethan didn't come from him. Of course it didn't. It came through the same quiet network that had carried everything else. He lost most of his friend group. Not all at once. Gradually. People got tired of the stories not lining up. Of being pulled into things that didn't feel right. Brittany eventually asked him to leave. She couldn't handle the constant emotional swings, the late-night calls, the way everything became urgent and exhausting at the same time. He moved back home. His parents made him pay rent. A small detail, but an important one. Consequences finally showing up in places he couldn't talk his way around. He started therapy, court-mandated, after pushing the restraining order too close to the line one too many times. He lost his job. Not because of me, because he stopped showing up after the hearing. Actions. Results. Simple. The last rumor I heard made me pause for exactly 1 second. He was dating someone new, and apparently they were similar. They tested each other. Constantly. Breakup threats every few weeks. Dramatic reconciliations. Endless cycles. A perfect match. I didn't feel anything about that. Not satisfaction. Not concern. Just distance. Because some patterns don't end. They just find new places to repeat. Sometimes people ask me in quieter conversations what actually ended it. Not the relationship. That part was obvious. But the attachment. The part of me that stayed too long, explained too much, tried too hard to make something unstable feel secure. And I always give the same answer. It wasn't the argument. It wasn't the gym. It wasn't even the court. It was the text. "I think maybe we need to break up." That moment. That choice. Because everything after that was just the truth catching up. He expected me to fight. To beg. To prove my love in some visible, exhausting way. Instead, I believed him, and I let him go. That's the part people don't always understand. Letting go isn't passive. It's a decision. A line you draw when you realize that staying would cost more than leaving. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. I don't test relationships anymore. I don't respond to threats. I don't negotiate with people who need to destabilize something just to feel secure in it. If someone wants to leave, they're free to go. And if they say it out loud, I listen. Because people always tell you who they are, sometimes in the worst possible way. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. My only real regret? Not doing it sooner. Well, that and keeping those awful decorative pillows for as long as I did. They really were uncomfortable as hell.